Hello, everyone out there in our community. I want to thank you for taking the time to view this video of our draft plan for reopening schools. My name is Mark Johnson, the very proud superintendent in Fountain Valley School District. And I'm joined here today by Dr. Steve McLaughlin, who oversees and leads our Instructional Services Division. And we'll be going through the slides on our instructional plan for the upcoming school year. To our students, staff, families, and community, we know how important a high quality in-person education is to each of us. We also know that the ambiguity that we all face and continue to work within is, needless to say, just challenging. We want to thank you for your patience, your emails, your phone calls, the ongoing connection that you've had with us over the last several weeks. Those of you who are participating in our summer learning program, just thank you for that and keeping the kids active. I want to thank you for the thoughtful suggestions and input that has been shared with us on how to safely reopen schools. We know that these decisions to reopen impact each of us, and they impact us differently, right, depending on our circumstances, and they impact our kids in our daily lives. And so we want to acknowledge that awkwardness of what we're all facing, and thank you again for your ongoing patience and participation. I want to thank a number of people who have helped us get to where we are today. We convened a reopening schools advisory, our labor associations, our staff, our district office team that has a continued passion and effort to bring forward this plan, while also doing the normal daily operations that we do in a school district. Please know that our district office is open and we are here to serve you. And we do ask that you follow all the safety precautions such as distancing, wearing a face covering, and washing your hands. Please know that many of the things that we talk about need to have conversations with our bargaining associations, and that work runs parallel to the plan for reopening our schools. So just thank you to those people doing that work. Today's webinar really is about an opportunity to share our draft plan. Please know that there are still many things within our plan being vetted, and that we'll be asking for your input on this plan. In fact, you can expect a survey coming out to you tonight. You will be receiving additional opportunity to comment on what you see today, and so just please use that as your opportunity to share ideas and feedback. And then just kind of conceptually, just keep this idea of this draft as something that still needs some work, but we wanted to get it to you as early as we could, once again, to solicit that input. We have about 6.5 weeks to go before school reopens on September 9th. We want to give you this plan so that you can hear it, you can process it, you can provide that input. And we also know that as you look at it and you think through how it impacts you, that you got to think of your own life and how that impacts the family, the kids, as well as our collective organization. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. And so today's agenda, we're going to go over the governor's update. He put it out last Friday. We sent you a communique along with links to that guidance. I'll do an overview of the plan, and then Dr. McLaughlin will go through the instructional models. And then once again, you can expect a parent survey coming out later today. So last Friday, there was some new guidance coming out for schools. You guys know that. And he talked about the state's monitoring list and that there are 30+ counties on that monitoring list. And that in order to open for in-person instruction for students in the fall, that a county needed to be off that list for 14 consecutive days. I'll talk about that further in a moment. This is how he started his press conference. Really this idea that learning is non-negotiable. Schools must provide meaningful instruction during the pandemic, whether they're open physically or not. And I want to be really clear about here that what we're building and sharing with you, we are not calling distance learning. We're calling it remote virtual learning. And it's a really clear distinction that we're making in the robustness and the rigor in the daily schedule that you will see kids going through and working with their staff. And then this other idea of we can't come back for in-person unless it's safe. So these are the 5 tenets of the governor's guidance, and it has to go with safe in-person based local health data, mask requirements, physical distancing, regular testing, and dedicated contact tracing of staff, and rigorous distance learning, which we're going to transition right into remote and virtual. So this is kind of what the big tenet was, is using health data, schools can physically reopen when we are off that monitoring list for 14 days. Schools that don't meet this requirement must begin in distance or virtual learning. Talk about the local health jurisdiction. That's Orange County Healthcare Agency that we would be working with. And so Orange County is on that monitoring list as of today. So if we were open right now, today, or upcoming Monday, that we would not be able to open for in-person instruction. That being said, it's really important that we all do what we can so Orange County can get off of this list, and we may have a chance for then in-person instruction. And then if you read the guidance that we sent out last Friday, you saw a little section about a waiver that school districts can apply for elementary age children only. Still a lot of details in that we need to hear from the state and our local jurisdiction. But as that comes available, we'll go ahead and share that with you as well. So when we look at Orange County rates, this is just the health data as of Monday. And just wanted to share the things that are being looked at, right, are those daily positive cases, the number of hospital beds, the current cases in ICU, the percent rate of testing positive, as well as the percent or the number of cases positive per 100,000 in the population. And so those are all factors that we're working through to try to get off of the county's or the state's monitoring list. And then another factor is this yellow line, if I could kind of point in that direction with the cursor, is that 7-day average for Orange County, and seeing that on a downward decline is really critical. When it comes to face coverings, you can see that kids under 2, really preschool age children, that there is no face covering requirement. 2 years old through 2nd grade, that it is strongly encouraged for those students to wear a face covering. But once in 3rd grade and up through high school, that it is mandatory for a face covering mask, and only those students and staff members who are exempt, defined by the California Department of Public Health, may actually not wear a mask. You can see on the right-hand side that when we get with certain populations, younger children, where pedagogically it'd be important for a student to see the teacher's mouth moving, so things like phonemic awareness, letters, vowels, so forth, that a face shield could be possible, but that to do that the teacher still needs to be 6 feet away from the students. Next, looking forward to just physical distancing, other adaptations. It really talks hard about staff to staff and staff to students being always 6 feet apart from one another. Does leave a little opportunity for students to be lesser than 6 feet, but that we would do things like partitions between desks, marking on floors and classrooms, and really trying our best to get all students facing forward. It's unique in that we've spent years building flexible learning environments where kids were able to collaborate daily and see each other and work on projects. And this really kind of takes us back a few years to where students would be in rows and all facing forward. The other idea out there is testing of staff. There was a recommendation that staff would be tested at least once every 2 months. There's still a lot of detail on this one that we'll need to figure out in working with our local health jurisdiction. And then the last part was the rigorous distance learning. Just access to devices. We're really lucky in Fountain Valley that we do have devices for our kids. There needs to be a daily live interaction with teachers and other kids. Challenging assignments that would be equivalent to the in-person classes. And then really the added supports for our English learners and special education students. So to begin this process, we convened a Reopening Schools advisory. And really that was to research, discuss, and provide input to staff on how we could go about safely reopening our schools. Just want to thank that group immensely for their time and energy, effort, input. And I want to show you what they've done so far. So on the far left, you'll see that those grayed out dates are all the dates that they've already met. We did a staff webinar yesterday and sent out a survey to them as well. Today we're doing our parent video with the survey following. They meet again Tuesday, but our real plan is that we would bring forward the final plan to the board on August 3rd at a special board meeting, and that they would approve our plan. That would then let us go out and open actual registration for families on August 7th. And then you can see just the Reopening Schools Advisory has some tentative work possibly based upon how we finish next week. So when we look at guidance, there's a lot of different groups that have produced and drafted guidance measures for school districts. I'm just going to go through some of them, but I know you're aware of it. But the CDC, California Department of Public Health, California Department of Education, Orange County Department of Education, American Academy of Pediatrics, National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. And then you know that the Orange County School Board published a white paper most recently that we wrote you about. And so they all say different things, except for a couple of them. And so the two that we are using as our guidance is one, the one on the right comes from the California Department of Public Health. We know that's the one that's backed by the governor. And the second one is Orange County Together, which is drafted by Orange County Department of Education and has been approved by Orange County Healthcare Agency, our local health officer. So I know there's a lot of plans out there. Just please know these have always been our two guidance documents and will remain to do so. So one of the big things about reopening is this idea of an attestation to reopen. All businesses have to do it, schools do as well. We have to perform a detailed risk assessment and implement a site-specific plan, train our employees on the spread, implement some individual control measures, implement disinfecting protocols, and then physical distance guidelines. So our first subcommittee in the Reopening Schools Advisory was Health and Hygiene. And you see the two on the left. We've already talked about that. That's part of the governor's new guidance. But literally that we have physical barriers placed at the front of every reception area, and that we have personal desk shields for students when they are in class. And if you can remember, those folders we used to put up when we were younger so we could block off and it kept kids from looking at other kids' papers, they're like that, but they're transparent. And so it adds another layer of protection. We need health office protocols. We need a COVID-19 isolation room if something were to happen on a campus. And then how do we go about dealing with that situation and notifying the appropriate parties? Training and education. We know that our employees need to go through training, our students need to go through training, and that we will have to work with our parents to provide additional trainings on what can be done in the home to allow for us to have a better opportunity at in-person instruction. Staff's going to complete a daily health screening, and this is really where we'll need parents and families to be a significant partner in the idea of taking your students' temperature every single morning before school and not sending them to school when they are sick, because it can be so disruptive to possibly shutting a classroom down. Hand sanitizers, cleaning supplies, right? Regularly cleaning, frequent cleaning at all of our high-touch surfaces, and then signage throughout campus. And then this is one of the hardest parts because we have such a great parent group. And on any given day, we can have 30, 40 volunteers on our campuses. And that because of this pandemic, that we would have to basically restrict non-essential visitors and volunteers. And that is challenging for us to say, but it is in the interest of everyone's health and well-being. And then things like drinking fountains will be off limits. And so students would bring water bottles daily, but we would also have water bottles for those who didn't. Entering school buildings shouldn't be a surprise here, but students and staff wearing face coverings, parents having limited access, designated entry points, students being screened before they go in to a classroom. It's really just a check-in with the teacher. Transitioning into recess, students will follow designated routes for how they get on campus, how they exit campus, how they go to lunch, so forth. Students will have access to playground equipment. I think that's important, but social distancing will be encouraged and regular cleaning will apply. And then we are thinking of it in accordance with our local health officer that we basically think of kids in bubbles, right, with regard to that class, and that there may be opportunities where kids within the same class would be closer than 6 feet, but that class wouldn't interact with a second class or a third class. And so it really is creating kind of that protective layer around a classroom. And then really just the idea of when kids come back from outside that they wash their hands before they go to lunch. We have some scheduled time for them to wash hands, sanitize hands, and so forth. Serving meals, we know this is a big part of going to school, and so staff will take all the appropriate safety precautions. Students will social distance, wear face coverings. We'll package pre-plated meals, and food will be consumed outdoors, potentially in classrooms, but most likely outdoors. The parent lunch drop-off tables, just because of allowing people on campus, that we're going to stop that from happening in the foreseen future. and that we would try to do everything we could to have, exchange of monies digital. And so My School Bucks account. And there still will be grab and go lunches for students who participate in the full-time remote virtual learning and qualify for free or reduced lunch. Transporting kids, I don't think there would be any surprises here, but face coverings, students will get a thermometer check before they get on a bus, and that a parent or guardian needs to be with that student during the temperature check, just in case we have a fever. Bus drivers will take all the safety precautions. They'll be cleaned regularly. And then we'll open our windows to allow for more airflow, and space between students will be maximized. And so we do know we'll lose some capacity with our buses with regard to how many students they can transport, but that still will be something we can offer. Special populations and programs. This really looked at the various services we provide students with special needs, as well as the mental health and social emotional learning that we know all kids will need at this time. For many of our kids, they haven't had many social interactions with friends. And so we know that we need to socialize them back into school when it's appropriate. And so that'll be a big part of it. But, teletherapy for our students who get SAI and DIS services, a universal learning platform for our students. We have to look at how we use staff differently, right, in working with our students with special needs. And then IEP meetings would continue on the Zoom platform as feasible. Preschool and daycare, really, really proud to let you know that for several weeks, we've had 8 daycare classes open to the public for our families who need them. And they wear masks daily. The parents wear masks when dropping off. We follow all the social distancing, but really, really proud of the success of that program and being able to serve our community and families with their daycare needs. Also, outside play equipment was available. It's being disinfected twice, a ratio of 1 to 12 for our extended school program, and 10 to 1 for our preschool program. Meals are being served inside and students are supervised. And then rather than having a central check-in like a main office, that each classroom was doing its own check-in just to bring down the numbers of people around. I do know this, you guys were very well aware that if we open in a remote virtual, which is what we would be if we opened today, the various needs of daycare for our families. And so we're working hard to provide those options and feel very confident we're going to be able to provide daycare options when school reopens. The other idea is one of the models you'll see today is a hybrid or blended model, and it has students coming to school on different days or different times, and that on the days a student wouldn't be in school or the time they wouldn't be in school, we understand daycare is a high need for those families as well. Dr. McLaughlin will share more on that later. Maintaining healthy operations, just once again, just to make sure you know that we've put forward every possibility, followed the states and the local guidance so that we can be safe when we come back, but wearing the appropriate PPE, custodial staff, making sure we have all the supplies and that they're readily stocked, and then that we follow Cal OSHA and EPA guidelines on the way that we do clean. They will be cleaned daily. Frequently touched surfaces will be cleaned throughout the day. Shared playground equipment will be cleaned. Fresh air will be introduced into classrooms, air-conditioned rooms. Air filters will be changed regularly, and so we want you to be aware of that. As shared earlier, the use of drinking fountains will be suspended, and we are encouraging everyone to bring their own water bottle. What happens when a student or staff member gets sick? We took these snapshots right out of the framework that we shared with you last Friday. And so what you can see is this was an area that really needed some attention as far as guidance, but you can see what we do when a student gets sick, when a staff member gets sick. How would we quarantine? Why would we quarantine? And so I just really encourage all of our community parents, staff, to look at that framework. It was one of the links, just again, and read it for yourself and see and work through the various cases of when somebody was sick, what if somebody tested positive, what if they tested negative, how would that all function and work? And then considerations for closures. Once we are able to reopen, right, because we're off the state's monitoring list, if we were to fall back onto the state's monitoring list, it doesn't mean we have to close for in-person instruction. Instead, we'd follow the language and guidance here, which talks about 5% of teacher, student, staff in a 14-day period had come down with COVID. We'd work with our local health officer. After closing for that 14-day period, there would be the opportunity to reopen after. And then if 25% or more of the schools in our district were closed due to COVID, and so for us, that would be 3 schools, right, within the 14-day period, that we may need to close down the entire district. And once again, this comes directly out of that framework from the state. So now it's time to work into our instructional models. This has been some of the most complex work. Once again, just want to say that there's still work to do here. What we're sharing with you is definitely conceptual, although there's a lot of detail in it. Just know that there's also a lot of flexibility for how things would work at individual school sites. But we thought it was important that you were able to see the models, see what a day kind of looked like, and just once again, know that they are in draft form. And so these are the 3 models we'll be talking about today. There's modified traditional. We're calling it modified traditional because the day won't look the same as it did in the past. Kids will be on campus 5 days a week, but there are so many extra things we need to do within the schedule for cleaning and sanitizing and ensuring kids wash their hands and so forth. So we know we're going to lose some daily instructional time, but that the trade-off to be on campus is worth it, right? So that's one of the models we're building. The other model is a hybrid or blended model. This has students on campus less than 5 days per week with remote virtual learning available on the days that they're not on campus. Once again, just remember in a blended model that does require still a live interaction with the teacher in the classroom when those students aren't on campus. And then the other one is the full remote virtual. We do know that from our first survey that about 22% of our families thought that would be the best option for them full time for the entire school year. And so that'll be an option as well for each of you. And then the reason that we're asking our board to approve all 3 plans, and Dr. McLaughlin will talk about this a little bit further, is the fluidity of this COVID pandemic. And we may start in one model and go through it and either be able to move into a different model or have to fall back into a different model. And so we know that as of today, we'd be in full virtual remote for all students, but that when we were off the monitoring list, we would work to have an in-person model that opened up and was available for families and so forth. So those are the 3 models. Just want to take you through a really quick pro-con for each of the 3. This is not an exhaustive list. There are so many more we could put, but we just want to get the gist of kind of what's out there. But the pro of this model is we know it. It's familiar, right? It's face-to-face. It does allow for our kids to have some social interaction. It creates that daily strong routine. We know that it requires also social distancing and PPE, which is challenging, right? We know kids like to be around each other and play and so forth, and some of that will have to be modified. Changes in schedules, recesses, lunches, and also based upon guidance. If we were able to be in an in-person model, hopefully you saw with school closure that there are times where this could blend between an in-person falling back out into a virtual, coming back to an in-person. And so we got to be aware that and what that means for kids and families. The next one is really that hybrid or blended. So it's similar to the traditional in that there's that face-to-face setting. It does allow for greater levels of social distancing. It would be fewer kids in the room at any given time. It allows for modified social interaction, strong routines, similar to the cons, right? Just PPE, daily schedules, falling in and out. But the other con is that we could only see about 40 to 50% of our students on any given day. The last one on the full virtual one is its daily live interaction between teachers and students. Students can work at their own pace and schedule. Lowered safety risk, obviously, right? As families and students would be at home. It does have limited direct interaction with students, and it does require home support in the building of a home learning environment. And it does also have daycare needs for working families. And we know this, that the kids who do best in these models really are able to have independent self-monitor, and they're motivated for it. And we know that that's very, very different for a kindergartner as it would be for a 6th, 8th grader. But it does require some level of that independence. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. McLaughlin, and he's going to walk us through the draft daily schedule of each program. And so take it over, Dr. McLaughlin.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson, and hello, everyone. We are excited to be able to share at least some draft proposals of models for an instructional day this early in the process so that we can continue to solicit input and learn and adapt as we go forward. But it will give you a sense of what is under consideration and the various pieces. Before we get started there, I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who supported distance learning in the spring. Our teacher support staff really pivoted quickly to learn and adapt their instruction. Our families pivoted quickly in order to create learning environments and support their kids. And then our community came together too in various levels. So in true Fountain Valley School District way, both in the Huntington Beach side and the Fountain Valley, we thank you for supporting our kids as they learn and making sure that in that distance learning time, which we actually call crisis learning time, we were able to stay connected with our kids all along. So what you'll see today is various models as previously described with some detail. I encourage you to sit with them and see them. We will also attach some slides so that you can see them in still form so that you can think about them. And then when you take the survey to provide some input, we can have a better understanding what your needs are. So on behalf of everybody, thank you again for your support during distance learning. And here goes the first model. Dr. Johnson, if you could advance the slide, please.
Yep.
So when it comes to these three models, one of the things that we've spoken about already is this idea to have consistent plans and the ability to pivot between models based on county, state, or federal directives and or classroom site and district closures due to local outbreaks. What you'll notice in these models, and we studied over 50 models nationally and internationally, we solicited a variety of inputs, and we wanted to create an organizational structure that could blend in between all of them, so that if we did start in a hybrid model and we were able to then go to an in-person, perhaps in a in a full virtual model, and we were able to pivot and go into a hybrid model, and then finally into the modified traditional model, that there could be supports to help with that transition, including consistent instructional days, starts and stop times, consistent contacts with teachers throughout the day, and so that it could be seamless as we move through that experience. And so with that, they've all been built to support each other in that capacity, with the understanding that as of right now, the anticipation is to start in full remote or virtual, but if that does change prior to the school year, that will be ready for either a hybrid or a modified traditional model. Next slide. So the elementary and middle school, the first one is the modified traditional. So some key areas of consideration is obviously a focus on safety. And you'll see that when it comes to drop off and pickup times, cleaning, multiple recesses and lunches. It meets all requirements for daily instructional minutes. It has a modified early out day on Monday for teachers and for sites to do planning. So where we traditionally had that on Thursday, we're moving it to Monday. It'll also provide some instructional continuity for Tuesday through Friday, which you'll see when within the model. There are very consistent blocks of time. We are recommending moving to a block schedule to reduce the amount of transitions at the middle school, similar to what our high school students are doing. So this would also support a transition from middle school to high school in the coming years. And it is aligned with other models to support transition to hybrid and virtual remote when necessary. So looking at the first one, this is our elementary modified traditional. On the top of the page is TK through second, and on the bottom is third through fifth. And you'll notice very similar models here with designated drop-off and pickup times, and they are staggered with our primary grades coming in around 8 o'clock and then leaving at 2, and at the upper grades coming in at 8:15 and leaving at 2:15. Both of those models have dedicated check-in times to support the safety pieces that we want, as well as closeout reminders and resetting the classrooms. Additionally, throughout the day, you'll see consistent instructional blocks that are dedicated for learning time, recesses that are staggered to support cleaning throughout the day, and then lunches that are staggered to support cleaning throughout the day. On Mondays, those are our early out days, and that will help us with additional teacher planning, site planning, office hours training, and students will have remote or self-guided work through a dedicated online curriculum. For our middle schools in a modified traditional, once again, we would start the week in a Monday early out early release day. And then throughout the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, it would be full days. And you'll notice that each day, the students will only take 3 periods a day in a block schedule. So they'll either be transitioning from periods 1, 3, 5, or 2, 4, 6, depending on the day. And that will allow us to reduce the amount of transitions, which increases our safety precautions. Additionally, you'll see that there are built-in safety precautions at the beginning of the day for check-ins, at the end of the day for closeout reminders. Now, while we don't have staggered drop-off and pickups for middle school, under consideration are specific drop-off and pickup zones, such as that a 6th grade would be dropped off at one part of the campus, 7th grade at another, and 8th grade at another, to reduce the amount of congregation amongst the students. Additionally, throughout those days, you'll see that there are breaks and cleaning designated. While it may not be staggered at the middle school, we would designate areas for students to be during break. And then at lunch, we have broken up in our days into 2 dedicated lunches where students will either be at lunch during that time or what we're calling a tutorial period. A tutorial period could be used for a variety of resources, including supporting social emotional learning for our students, additional homework time, perhaps career exploration, or maybe just check-in and announcement times throughout the day. But that does allow us to build in 2 dedicated lunches and spread out our students. And then finally, on Mondays, again, we would be in an early out schedule, which would allow for our teachers to plan, our sites to plan, perhaps office hours, additional training, and then students would be given remote self-guided work through a dedicated online curriculum. Moving into the full remote virtual model, some areas of consideration, consistent with the modified or traditional schedule, and you'll hear that frequently, that they are all blended together to support the potential transitions. They meet all requirements for daily instructional minutes. This critical one is new within the governor's or the budget that was passed in the new state law, that there is a requirement for live daily check-ins. There are regular built-in breaks to prevent Zoom fatigue on our virtual days. Mondays will again be early out days for teacher and site planning. There are very consistent blocks of instructional time. Tuesday through Friday block scheduled to reduce transitions for middle schools. And then Tuesday to Friday afternoons are going to be open and flexible for extended office hours for teachers, potentially enrichment programs like robotics, intervention where necessary, perhaps clubs at the middle school level, and then pull-out programs, whether that be additional intervention, special education, and so on. And then finally, once again, they are aligned with models, other models to support transition from a hybrid and the modified traditional when necessary. So looking at the elementary, this is all TK through 5. So in the full virtual model, and you can see here how this has changed dramatically from our distance learning models, where we would have a dedicated start time of the day. Now this is just a sample, understanding that the day may be flexed based on the teacher. We are looking at 2 dedicated online curriculums and evaluating those to implement. So we do anticipate additional resources, along with our current print resources and the other virtual resources, online resources that we had in the spring, such as IXL. But you'll see that we would recommend that we start the day together as a whole class, whether that's Monday or Friday. Then there are dedicated times for teachers to break out with students throughout the day. We've extended the lunchtime in both areas to support additional breaks. And then on Tuesday through Friday, you'll notice that we are asking that our students and our teachers reconnect at the end of the day. And then finally, on the end of the day, on Tuesday through Friday, you'll see that students would have self-guided work through an online, dedicated online curriculum, and that teachers could have office hours to check in with families, and students provide additional intervention, offer enrichment, or pull out programs. And then again, on Mondays, we would have our early out program. So unlike last spring, where schedules were a little flexible, we are going to incorporate a dedicated schedule for a start and end. We do want to make sure there are breaks throughout the day. So you'll notice that there are 15-minute transition breaks so that people can take a breath in between Zoom opportunities, and then an extended lunch, and then connecting again Tuesday through Friday throughout the week. At the middle school, again, consistent, and a Monday being a modified day. And then you'll notice again that block schedules are built in Tuesday through Friday. Now on Monday for our middle schools, what we're recommending is an opening of the week check-in for every period. So that's the only day that our students would interact every period with our teachers. So they would go through periods 1 through 6, have a 25-minute check-in. This is a great chance for our teachers to set up the week with the students and what the learning expectations are. You'll notice there are still virtual breaks or transitions to allow for, again, another break and then transition into their next period, a dedicated break in the middle of the day on Monday, and then an extended lunch. On Mondays, teachers, again, would have planning time, site planning, training, office hours. Students would have remote self-guided work. Tuesday through Friday would follow our block schedule. So Tuesday would be dedicated to 135, Wednesday 246, Thursday 135, and Friday 246, with dedicated breaks along those periods, additional extra long lunch. And then we'd reconnect with our students every single day, Tuesday through Friday, through that tutorial period again. Again, this is a critical piece of it. Having our students reconnect later in the day with our staff, we think will keep them engaged all day long. Additionally, if we are going to be pivoting or transitioning from a full remote virtual model into an in-person model, this is a great place where we can connect with our students outside of the instructional period to talk about how we're going to transition back into a full school day. And then you'll notice at the end of those days, Tuesday through Friday, that students will be given self-guided work through a dedicated online curriculum, online resources from our teachers. And our teachers would have office hours and opportunity for clubs, enrichment, pull-out programs, intervention, etc. Our final model or models are our hybrid models. These are the most complex. And so what you'll notice is we're going to offer, at least for consideration, a hybrid model number 1, which we're calling rotating days cohorts. And that's for both middle and elementary school. And an additional potential option that is under consideration is hybrid number 2, which is a morning cohort and an afternoon cohort. And that would be for elementary schools only. You'll notice they are consistent with modifying traditional schedules. They actually blend in the modified and the full remote models. They meet all requirements for daily instructional minutes. There still is a requirement for a daily live check-in. So even if a student is off campus all day and half of them are on campus, we still need to connect with those kids off campus. And we think we found a creative way to integrate that into the classroom. There are regular built-in breaks to prevent Zoom fatigue again. Monday early out days for teacher and site planning. Consistent instructional blocks of time similar to all the other models. Tuesday through Friday would be block schedules to reduce transition at the middle school when on site. Tuesday to Friday afternoons, again, have opportunities for office hours, enrichment, intervention clubs, pull-out programs, and it is an integrated model with the modified traditional and the virtual remote. So here's what it looks like for the elementary, and it may be overwhelming. I fully understand when you first look at it, but you'll see that the top is the TK through 2, and the bottom is the 3 through 5, and essentially it's an integration of both models. We would start the week with all of our students in remote learning. This would give us a chance to connect with all of our kids on Monday remotely, both groups A and B, or cohort A and B. And it's familiar now based on the remote model that we would have a whole group experience. We'd do some small group pullout. Then we'd take a break, and then the afternoons on Monday, teachers would either plan, work with their site, do training, office hours, or our students would be given remote self-guided work through a dedicated online curriculum. Now going over to Tuesday through Thursday, what you'll notice is a group A and B day. And so 50% of our students would attend school on any given day. So Tuesday would be group A on site. Group B on Tuesdays would be home or remote. Wednesday it would be group B, and A students would be home or remote, and so on. But you'll also see within those on-site schedules dedicated check-in and check-out procedures to emphasize safety. They are staggered drop-off and pickup times, and there are multiple recesses and lunches to support cleaning throughout the day. Now, the way that we are recommending that we meet the need for that live virtual check-in throughout the day is sometime during that instructional block 2, that we have our students who are at home to come into the classroom virtually and connect with our students inside the classroom. Now, it may not be the entire hour and a half, it may be only for a 30-minute check-in, but this is a wonderful opportunity for us to bridge that school or class community that is half at home and half in the classroom, in anticipation that the A and B group will eventually be on campus again. Additionally, our teachers could do some question time for kids that are at home who are going through a dedicated online curriculum. We can do a variety of things of connecting our A students and our B students or our cohort students during class, during the day. And this would meet the state requirement, in addition to provide just an opportunity to grow our classroom community, whether you're in class or you're out of class, and we can bring all those 30 kids together at one time. For the middle school, we have our rotating day schedule. Again, you'll see that on Monday, that is a remote day where students would follow a 1 through 6 schedule, so they can check in with their teachers and they can set up the week, the instructional expectations with the week. The same idea with virtual passing periods, a dedicated break, and then teacher planning, site planning, office hours, and student self-guided work through a dedicated curriculum. Tuesday through Friday would follow a block schedule day. So you'll notice that on Tuesday, Group A would go to periods 1, 3, and 5. On Wednesday, students B would go 1, 3, 5. The opposite cohort would be home during those time. They'd return on Thursday, and they would meet with their periods 2, 4, and 6, and then Friday 2, 4, and 6 for Group B. Within a block schedule, they are extended periods, so they're hour-and-a-half blocks of time. We built in the check-ins and the closeout reminders, and then you'll notice that the tutorial period still exists there. Now, this is where we would recommend that we virtually connect with our kids who are at home, and so there would be a dedicated check-in. So if I'm in Group B on Tuesday and I'm not on campus and I'm doing self-guided work through an online curriculum, I would then come into my tutorial period and I'd meet with my teacher and my other student friends for a half-hour period. This is, again, a wonderful time to do either enrichment, to do some social emotional learning, to do some connect with clubs, or to offer announcements. But it does give us a chance to connect kids who are at home with kids who are on campus and blend the cohorts together. The final one is probably looks the most complex, but if you think of it as the early bird, late bird schedules of days before, it follows a similar model. The top of the page is TK through 2, and the bottom is 3rd through 5th. This is what we're calling our hybrid 2 for elementary only, or an AM/PM model. And when students are not on campus, student groups are remote when not on site. So if you look at the top of the page or the bottom of the page, Group A in those cohorts would come to school for either the early morning portion or the first half of the day. There would be a dedicated break between the next group coming on campus for breaks as well as cleaning opportunities. And then Group B would come on campus towards a later day. But you'll also notice that Monday is a early out day, and then Tuesday through Friday follow a traditional schedule. Each of them have, because they're on site, dedicated check-ins and an expectation of reminders for safety. There are staggered drop-off and pickups, staggered lunches and recesses. And so when students aren't on campus, in all of the virtual models, we are working to provide childcare for everyone. Additionally, as this is my last slide, I would like to comment that when we are looking at cohorts of Group A and B, we are understanding too that there are family needs, and so we would be addressing those needs to make sure that wherever we can, whenever possible, to keep families in similar cohort groups to provide easy access. So with that, just want to thank everybody for their input. There's been hours and hours spent on this, including the advisory team, in addition to a variety of community members. This is our attempt, again, to integrate the model so that we can go through seamless transition, provide safety considerations, increase the rigor in our virtual programs, and then just be ready at any given notice to come in and out of one of these programs and provide a very structured instructional program.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. McLaughlin, for walking us through all those various models. You can see, as he already stated, the detailed planning within each of the models. Just want to throw some additional ideas out there. For our families, when you look at rotating schedules in Group A, B, and so forth, we know that there are families with multiple children. and that you could have a student that may start at 8 and another student starting at 8:15, that we would make accommodations for you to drop off at that earlier time with supervision for older children or siblings in the other blocks of time. We also know that as we work through this COVID pandemic, that really there are varying opinions on what's appropriate with regards to safety. And so one of the biggest drivers for us has been trying to provide parent choice. And that for our parents who want that full-time remote virtual model, that will be an option for you. To our parents who want an in-person model, you know that although you're seeing 3 models, our goal is still to try to get back to that traditional normal setting. And so we would be asking you to enroll in that program. If we aren't able to get there for various reasons, and we had to implement a blended or hybrid program, those students that chose the traditional program would just roll into that hybrid program for in-person instruction. But just know that we are having your thoughts in mind. We too are parents of school-age kids, and we have those same thoughts and ideas as you do. A few more things just to cover. Each of these models, whether you're full remote or obviously in person, those normal traditional factors that are part of school are still in place. So there still is mandatory attendance for students. Students will have grades and marks, and they will be turning and submitting and completing work and taking tests and getting feedback and scores and so forth from their teachers. So just know that's a significant difference than, as Dr. McLaughlin calls it, crisis learning this spring. But we know that it's moving more toward that more normal schedule, regardless of the option or model we're able to implement coming this fall. Want to close with this. Just want to thank the team who continues to work to try to bring a thoughtful plan forward to our board, as well as to our parents, families, community. We know that the spring was a tremendous change. It was a difference. It was, in many ways, it was a burden that we had never dealt with before. And so just want to thank you for everything you did, to our staff for your ability to pivot in such a unique and different way. And I am truly proud and honored to be able to work with each of you. So just coming back to this next step, just as a friendly reminder. So parents, after you watch this video, right, as part of the link, you'll see that there's a survey. We'd ask that you watch the video prior to taking the survey because it'll add so much context to what you're kind of submitting. There is an option, or there is a question asking you to prioritize which model's best for your family, a first, second, third choice. Please know that you're not telling us the model you actually want. That will happen at registration beginning August 7th. What you're doing is giving us an indication for us to plan for staffing. If a certain percent wants full virtual remote, we know we have to allocate those resources there and vice versa. So just know today, it's still, it's not the final decision. You're just giving us an indication so we can better plan for you in September. And then August 3rd is that board meeting where we'll be bringing forward these slides with some additional components to it for our board to approve. Once approved, these slides and that plan can then be released publicly. But at least you're getting a chance to see a draft. Once again, just want to keep promoting it. August 7th would be the first registration date if everything goes in the way that we think it's going to go. And so with that, once again, just want to thank you for your time. I want to wish you continued safety and wellness. And on behalf of our Board of Trustees and the entire Fountain Valley School District family, take care of yourselves, and hopefully you're finding some time to be with loved ones. So take care, everyone. Bye-bye.